I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the countertop. The cheerful yellow walls that I'd so carefully painted last spring now felt like they were closing in on me. My mother's words echoed in my ears, each one a hammer blow to the life I thought I knew. "Abby, honey, I saw Ben with another woman," Linda had said, her voice filled with a mix of concern and hesitation. They were intimate. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. "Mom! Dad! I'm home!" Emma's voice rang out, followed by the thud of her backpack hitting the floor. I plastered on a smile and called out, "In the kitchen, sweetie." Emma bounced in, her long blonde hair swinging behind her. At 16, she was the spitting image of me at that age, but with her father's sharp wit and determination. "What's for dinner?" "I'm starving. I was thinking we'd order pizza tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your dad should be home soon." Emma's eyes narrowed. "Pizza? On a Wednesday? What's going on?" Before I could answer, the front door opened again. My heart raced as I heard Ben's footsteps in the hallway. "Hello, family," he called out, his voice as confident and assured as always. I watched as he entered the kitchen, his crisp suit perfectly pressed, not a hair out of place. How could this man, who I'd loved for nearly 2 decades, be capable of such betrayal? "Pizza night." Ben raised an eyebrow, loosening his tie. "What's the occasion?" I forced a laugh. Can't a wife treat her family once in a while? Ben's eyes met mine, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something. Guilt? Concern? But it was gone in an instant, replaced by his usual charming smile. "Of course, dear. Sounds wonderful." He turned to Emma. "How was school, princess?" As they chatted, I busied myself with plates and napkins, my mind racing. Should I confront him now? Wait until Emma was in bed? Or was my mother mistaken? "Mom!" Emma's voice cut through my thoughts. "Earth to Mom." I blinked, realizing I'd been standing still, clutching a stack of plates. "Sorry, sweetie." "What was that?" Emma rolled her eyes. "I asked if we could get extra cheese on the pizza." "Oh, of course." I nodded, reaching for my phone to place the order. Ben's hand on my arm stopped me. "Allow me, dear. You seem a bit distracted." As he dialed the pizza place, I caught Emma watching me with a puzzled expression. I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We ate pizza, talked about our days, and watched a sitcom together. But every laugh felt forced. Every casual touch from Ben made me flinch inside. Later, as I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection, I made a decision. I couldn't go on like this, pretending everything was fine when my world was crumbling around me. Taking a deep breath, I opened the bathroom door and walked to our bedroom, where Ben was already in bed, reading a book. "Ben," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "we need to talk." He looked up, his brow furrowing. "What's wrong, Abby?" I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart pounding. "I know about the other woman." The book slipped from Ben's hands, landing with a soft thud on the bedspread. His face paled, and in that moment I knew. My mother had been right. "Abby, I can explain." He started, but I held up a hand to stop him. "No, Ben. Not tonight. I can't. I can't hear it right now." I stood up, my legs shaky. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room." As I walked out, I heard him call my name, but I didn't turn back. I had taken the first step, and there was no going back now. Tomorrow would bring a new day, and with it, the fight of my life. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning in the unfamiliar guest room. As the first rays of sunlight peeked through the curtains, I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. I had to face Ben to hear his explanation, no matter how much it might hurt. I found him in the kitchen, already dressed for work, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I entered, his face a mix of guilt and apprehension. "Abby," he began, setting down his mug. "About last night." "No." I cut him off, my voice surprisingly steady. "I need you to listen, Ben. Really listen. He nodded, his usual air of confidence noticeably absent. I took a deep breath. I know about the affair. My mother saw you with her. How long has it been going on? Ben's shoulders sagged. 3 months, he admitted quietly. Abby, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. 3 months isn't a moment, Ben. I snapped, feeling my carefully constructed calm begin to crumble. It's a choice. A series of choices. He stood up, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Please, Abby. Let me explain. Things haven't been right between us for a while now. You've been so distant, so caught up in your routines. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My routines? You mean taking care of our home, our daughter, your needs? Is that what's driven you into another woman's arms? Ben's face hardened. That's not fair, Abby. You know that's not what I meant. But when was the last time you did something for yourself? For us? You've lost yourself in being a wife and mother. His words stung, partly because I knew there was a grain of truth in them. But that didn't excuse his actions. So this is my fault? I asked, my voice rising. I've failed in my role as your wife, is that it? That's not what I'm saying. Ben's voice matched mine in volume. But you have to admit you've changed. The Abby I married was vibrant, ambitious. Now it's like you're just going through the motions. I felt tears pricking at my eyes but refused to let them fall. And you think cheating on me is the solution? Instead of talking to me, working on our marriage, you decide to betray everything we've built. Before Ben could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. What's going on? She asked, looking between us. Why are you fighting? Ben and I exchanged glances, neither of us sure how to handle this moment. Emma, sweetie. I began, trying to keep my voice calm. Your father and I are just having a disagreement. About what? Emma pressed, her gaze sharp. Is this why you were acting so weird last night, Mom? I hesitated, not wanting to burden her with the truth, but Ben spoke up. Emma, I've made a terrible mistake, he said, his voice heavy with regret. I've hurt your mother and our family. Emma's face paled. What did you do? The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as understanding dawned in Emma's eyes, followed quickly by anger and disappointment. You cheated on Mom, didn't you? She accused, her voice trembling. Ben nodded, unable to meet her gaze. Emma turned to me, her expression a mix of sympathy and frustration. And you're just going to forgive him, aren't you? Like you always do when he messes up. Her words hit me like a slap. Was that how my daughter saw me? As a doormat? I don't know what I'm going to do, Emma, I said honestly. But I promise you, I won't just sweep this under the rug. Emma shook her head, grabbing her backpack from the counter. I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to school. As the front door slammed behind her, Ben and I were left standing in the kitchen, the weight of our broken family hanging heavy between us. What happens now? Ben asked quietly. I looked at him, the man I'd loved for so long, now a stranger in so many ways. I don't know, Ben, but things can't go back to how they were. I won't let them. The days following my confrontation with Ben blurred together in a haze of tension and unspoken words. We danced around each other, our once comfortable routines now stilted and awkward. Emma retreated into herself, spending more time in her room than with us. The weight of our fractured family pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. It was during one of these suffocating moments that I made my decision. I needed space, a place to think and rediscover who I was beyond being Ben's wife and Emma's mother. With trembling hands, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been staring at for days. Hello, is this about the apartment for rent? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. An hour later, I found myself across town, standing in a small, sun-filled studio apartment. The landlady, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Chun, smiled as she showed me around. It's not much, she said, but it's a good place for new beginnings. New beginnings. The words echoed in my mind as I signed the lease, a mixture of excitement and terror coursing through me. Back at home, I sat in my car, gathering courage to face what lay ahead. As I walked in, I heard raised voices coming from the kitchen. "I can't believe you're defending him." Emma's voice sharp with anger. "I'm not defending anyone," Ben replied, sounding weary. "I'm just saying that relationships are complicated." "Complicated?" Emma scoffed. "You cheated on Mom. That's not complicated, that's just wrong." I stepped into the kitchen, and they both fell silent, guilt and defiance warring on their faces. "Abby," Ben started, but I held up a hand. "I need to talk to you both," I said, my heart pounding. "I've made a decision." They looked at me expectantly, and I took a deep breath. "I've rented an apartment," I said, watching their expressions shift from confusion to shock. "I'm moving out for a while. I need some time to figure things out." "What?" Emma's voice was small, all her earlier bravado gone. "Mom, you can't leave." Ben stood frozen, his face pale. "Abby, please, we can work this out. You don't have to go." I shook my head, feeling stronger with each word. "I do, Ben. I need to do this for me. I've lost myself in this family, and I need to find out who I am again." "But what about us?" Emma asked, tears welling in her eyes. "What about me?" My heart ached at her pain, but I stood firm. "I'm not abandoning you, sweetheart. I'll still be here for you, always. But I need this time." Ben finally found his voice. "How long will you be gone?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "As long as it takes." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma stormed out of the kitchen, her footsteps thundering up the stairs. Ben slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. "I did this," he murmured. "I drove you away." Part of me wanted to comfort him, to fall back into old patterns. But I resisted. "No, Ben. Your actions were the catalyst, but this is about more than that. This is about me finding myself again." As I turned to leave the kitchen, Ben called out, "Do you think you'll come back?" I paused in the doorway, not turning around. "I don't know. But I do know that things can't go back to how they were. Whether I come back or not, everything has to change." With those words hanging in the air, I walked away, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. The road ahead was uncertain, but as I climbed the stairs to pack my bags, I felt a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something new. The days following my announcement were a whirlwind of emotions. I spent most of my time packing, sorting through years of memories and deciding what to take to my new apartment. Ben hovered on the periphery, alternating between pleading for another chance and sullen silence. Emma, however, was a storm of teenage fury. It all came to a head on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner one last time before my move the next day, when Emma burst through the door, soaking wet and seething. "I can't believe you're actually going through with this," she shouted, dropping her backpack on the floor with a thud. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Emma, we've talked about this. You need time," she mimicked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You need space." "What about what I need, Mom? What about our family?" Before I could respond, Ben walked in, his tie loosened and his face weary. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. Emma whirled on him. "Did you know she's leaving tomorrow? Did you even try to stop her?" Ben's shoulders sagged. "Emma, it's not that simple." "Of course it is," Emma cried. "You messed up, Dad. You cheated. But Mom's the one walking out on us." I felt my carefully constructed composure crumbling. "I'm not walking out on anyone, Emma. I'm trying to." "To what?" Emma interrupted. "To find yourself?" "Newsflash, Mom. You're a middle-aged housewife who can't even keep her family together. What exactly are you hoping to find?" Her words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, gripping the kitchen counter for support. Ben stepped forward, his face thunderous. "That's enough, Emma. You will not speak to your mother that way." But Emma was on a roll, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "Why not? It's the truth, isn't it? She's failed at being a wife, and now she's failing as a mother too." "Stop it," I shouted, my voice cracking. Just stop. The kitchen fell silent. The only sound the steady drip of water from Emma's wet clothes. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not just anger, but fear and hurt in her eyes. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just about my leaving. This was about years of feeling second best to my role as Ben's wife, of watching me put everyone else's needs before my own. "Oh, Emma," I said softly, stepping towards her. "I'm so sorry." She flinched away from me, but I persisted. "I'm sorry that I haven't been the mother you needed. I'm sorry that I lost myself so completely in being a wife and mother that I forgot how to be anything else." Emma's lower lip trembled, her anger giving way to tears. "Then why can't you just fix it here? Why do you have to leave?" I glanced at Ben, who was watching us with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. "Because sometimes," I said carefully, "you need to step away from a situation to see it clearly. I need to remember who I am so I can be a better mother to you, and maybe a better wife to your father." "But what if you don't come back?" Emma whispered, voicing the fear that I knew had been eating at her. I pulled her into a hug, feeling her resist for a moment before melting into my embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, I will always come back to you. Always." Over Emma's shoulder I met Ben's gaze. There was a glimmer of understanding there, maybe even respect. As I held my daughter, I realized that this wasn't just about finding myself anymore. It was about becoming the woman, the mother, the person I needed to be, for myself, for Emma, and maybe even for Ben. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time, I felt truly ready to face it. The morning of Emma's 16th birthday dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I'd been up since 4, preparing a special breakfast, Emma's favorite blueberry pancakes, crispy bacon, and freshly squeezed orange juice. The table was set with our best china, a small wrapped gift at Emma's place. As I put the finishing touches on the table, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ben appeared first, his eyes widening at the spread. "Abby, this is wow," he said, a hint of the old warmth in his voice. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Emma followed shortly after, her face lighting up at the sight. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this," she said, but I could see the pleasure in her eyes. "Of course I did," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's not every day my baby turns 16. We sat down, an uneasy truce settling over us as we began to eat. For a moment it felt like old times. The three of us sharing a meal, the love palpable despite our recent struggles. As Emma finished her pancakes, I took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Emma, Ben," I began, my voice shaking slightly. "I have something I need to tell you." They both looked at me, concern etching their features. "I've made a decision," I continued, my heart racing. "I'm moving out. Today." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's fork clattered to her plate, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. "What?" she whispered. "But it's my birthday." Ben's face had gone pale. "Abby, surely we can discuss this. You don't have to leave." I shook my head, tears threatening to spill. "I do. I've tried to make this work, to be the perfect wife and mother, but I've lost myself in the process. I need time to figure out who I am outside of this family." Emma pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "So you're just going to abandon us? On my birthday?" "Emma, no," I pleaded. "I'm not abandoning you. I'll still be here for you, just not living here." "How could you do this?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you." She ran from the room, leaving Ben and me in stunned silence. Ben's voice was low and dangerous when he finally spoke. "How long have you been planning this?" I met his gaze, steeling myself. "A while. I've rented an apartment across town." He laughed bitterly. "So while I've been trying to make amends, you've been plotting your escape." "Bravo, Abby." "This isn't about punishing you, Ben," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "It's about me needing to find myself again." "And what about our daughter?" he demanded. "What about her needs?" The accusation stung, but I held firm. Emma needs a mother who's whole, who knows who she is. I can't be that person right now, not here. Ben stood up, his chair toppling backward. You're making a mistake, Abby. A huge one. As he stormed out, I sat alone at the beautifully set table, the remains of our last family breakfast scattered before me. The weight of my decision pressed down on me, threatening to crush me. But as I began to clear the dishes, a strange sense of calm settled over me. Yes, I was hurting my family. Yes, the timing was terrible. But for the first time in years, I was putting myself first. I climbed the stairs to Emma's room, hearing her muffled sobs through the door. My hand hovered over the knob, wanting desperately to comfort her. But I knew that right now, my presence would only make things worse. I love you, Emma, I whispered to the closed door. More than you'll ever know. Then I turned and walked to our bedroom, soon to be just Ben's, to pack my bags. With each item I placed in my suitcase, I felt a mixture of grief and liberation. This was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I knew in my heart it was necessary. As I zipped up my suitcase, I took one last look around the room that had been my sanctuary for so many years. Goodbye, I whispered, to the room, to my old life, to the Abby I used to be. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up my bags and walked out, ready to face whatever came next. The first week in my new apartment passed in a blur of emotions. I alternated between exhilarating freedom and gut-wrenching guilt. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Ben and Emma, ranging from angry tirades to tearful pleas for me to come home. I responded sparingly, needing space to sort through my jumbled thoughts. On the 8th day, I woke to an unusual silence. No messages, no missed calls. The quiet unnerved me more than the constant barrage had. As I sipped my morning coffee, staring out at the unfamiliar view of my new neighborhood, my phone finally chimed. It was a text from Linda, my mother. Abby, call me. It's about Emma. My heart leaped into my throat as I dialed her number with shaking hands. Mom, what's wrong? I asked the moment she picked up. Linda's voice was tight with worry. Emma didn't come home last night. Ben just called me in a panic. He can't reach her, and none of her friends know where she is. The world tilted on its axis. What do you mean she didn't come home? Has he called the police? He's about to. Abby, I think you need to go over there. I was already grabbing my keys. I'm on my way. The drive to my old house felt interminable. My mind raced with terrifying scenarios. Had Emma run away? Was she hurt? Lost? The guilt crashed over me in waves. If anything had happened to her because of my selfish decision, I screeched into the driveway, barely remembering to put the car in park before I bolted out. Ben flung open the front door before I could even knock, his face haggard with fear and lack of sleep. Any news? I asked breathlessly. He shook his head. Nothing. I've called everyone I can think of. The police are on their way. We stood in the entryway, the awkwardness of our situation momentarily forgotten in the face of our shared terror for our daughter. This is my fault, I whispered, tears welling up. If I hadn't left. Don't. Ben cut me off. We can't think like that right now. We need to focus on finding her. Just then Ben's phone rang. He answered it on speaker. Mr. Reese, a young voice said. This is Zoe, Emma's friend. I think I know where she might be. Hope surged through me. Ver, Zoe? I asked urgently. There's this old treehouse in the woods behind the school. We used to go there sometimes when we wanted to be alone. She mentioned it the other day, said she might go there to think. Ben and I exchanged glances. Thank you, Zoe, he said. We'll check it out. We raced to the car, leaving a note for the police. The drive to the school was tense, neither of us speaking, both lost in our own thoughts and fears. As we approached the wooded area behind the school, I spotted a familiar figure huddled on a bench near the treeline. There! I cried, pointing. Ben barely had time to stop the car before I was out, running towards our daughter. Emma! I called out. She looked up, her face tear-stained and pale. Mom! She said, her voice small and confused. I pulled her into my arms, relief washing over me. Oh, Emma! We were so worried. Are you okay? She nodded against my shoulder, then pulled back as Ben approached. I'm sorry, she whispered. I couldn't be in that house anymore. Not with you gone and Dad. I just needed to think. Ben knelt beside us, his hand on Emma's shoulder. We understand, sweetheart. But please, don't ever disappear like that again. We were terrified. As we sat there, the three of us huddled together on that cold bench, I realized how fragile our family had become. The distance I'd created, thinking it would help me find myself, had instead pushed us all to the brink. I think, I said slowly, looking from Emma to Ben, that we all need to have a long talk. About everything. They nodded, and as we stood to walk back to the car, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were broken, yes, but maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to put ourselves back together. A week after the incident with Emma, I found myself standing on the doorstep of my former home, my heart pounding. I'd agreed to come over to discuss our family's future, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw when Ben opened the door. The house, once immaculate under my care, was in utter disarray. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, clothes strewn across the living room, and a thin layer of dust covered every surface. The sight hit me like a physical blow. Come in, Ben said, his voice rough with exhaustion. He looked disheveled, his usually crisp shirt wrinkled and his hair unkempt. I stepped inside, taking in the chaos. Ben, what happened here? He ran a hand through his hair, looking lost. I didn't realize how much you did, Abby. How you held everything together. A mix of emotions washed over me. Satisfaction at their struggle, guilt for feeling that way, and an overwhelming urge to start cleaning. Where's Emma? I asked, noticing the silence in the house. In her room. She's barely come out since, well, you know. I nodded, remembering the fear we'd shared when Emma had disappeared. I should talk to her. As I climbed the stairs, I heard muffled music coming from Emma's room. I knocked gently. Emma? It's Mom. Can I come in? The music stopped, and after a moment, the door creaked open. Emma stood there, looking small and vulnerable in oversized pajamas. Oh, Emma, I sighed, taking in her messy hair and the dark circles under her eyes. She fell into my arms, sobbing. Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. Please come home. I held her tight, my own tears falling. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. We have a lot to work through. We sat on her bed, surrounded by discarded clothes and crumpled papers. As Emma poured out her feelings, her anger at Ben's infidelity, her fear of our family falling apart, her guilt over lashing out at me, I realized how much my leaving had affected her. I thought I was doing the right thing, I said softly. I thought I needed to find myself. But I never meant to hurt you like this. Emma wiped her eyes. I get it now, Mom. I see how much you did for us, how we took you for granted. But we need you. I need you. Her words tugged at my heart, but I knew I couldn't simply fall back into my old role. I need you too, Emma. But things have to change. For all of us. We made our way downstairs, where Ben was attempting to load the dishwasher. He looked up as we entered, hope and apprehension warring on his face. Abby, Emma, He started, then faltered. I don't know how to fix this. I took a deep breath, looking around at the mess that our lives had become. We start by cleaning up, I said firmly. All of us, together. For the next few hours, we worked side by side, clearing away the physical debris of our broken family. As we cleaned, we really talked about our fears, our mistakes, our hopes for the future. Ben confessed the insecurities that had led to his affair, how he'd felt disconnected from me and sought validation elsewhere. Emma admitted to feeling neglected, caught between her warring parents. And I shared my feelings of loss of identity, of being taken for granted, of needing to rediscover who I was beyond being a wife and mother. As the house slowly returned to order, I felt a shift in the air. We weren't fixed, far from it, but for the first time I saw a glimmer of hope. Standing in the newly cleaned living room, I looked at Ben and Emma. This is a start, I said, but we have a long way to go. Ben nodded, his eyes serious. "Will you come home, Abby? Give us another chance." I hesitated, torn between the pull of my family and the newfound independence I'd discovered. I don't know," I admitted. "I need time to think." As I left the house that evening, my emotions were in turmoil. I'd seen firsthand the chaos my absence had caused, felt the love and need from my family. But I'd also tasted freedom, rediscovered parts of myself I'd thought long lost. Standing on the sidewalk, looking back at the house that had been my whole world for so long, I realized I was at a crossroads. The decision I made now would shape not just my future, but the future of our entire family. And for the first time in years, I truly didn't know what I was going to do. The day after my visit to the house, I woke to a flurry of text messages from Ben. "We need to talk," the last one read. "Please come over." My heart raced as I drove to my former home. When I arrived, I was surprised to see not just Ben, but Emma and my mother, Linda, waiting for me in the living room. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice wavering. Ben stood, his face a mask of remorse. "Abby, I owe you an apology. A big one. We all do." I sat down, bracing myself for what was to come. "I've been selfish," Ben continued. "I took you for granted, expected you to be perfect without appreciating all you did. My affair. It was inexcusable. I see that now." Emma chimed in, her eyes brimming with tears. "And I've been horrible, Mom. I didn't understand how much you sacrificed for us." "I'm so sorry." Linda reached out and squeezed my hand. "We've all realized how much you mean to this family, Abby. How lost we are without you." I felt tears welling up, but I held them back. "I appreciate your apologies, but it's not enough," Ben finished for me. "We know. That's why we've come up with a plan." They outlined their ideas. Ben would start therapy to work on his issues. Emma would take on more responsibilities around the house, and they both promised to show more appreciation for me. "And what about my needs?" I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. "What about the parts of myself I've rediscovered while I've been away?" There was a moment of silence before Ben spoke. "We want you to pursue those things, Abby. Your happiness matters. We'll support you in whatever you want to do." I looked at each of them, seeing the sincerity in their eyes. But I wasn't ready to give in just yet. "Words are easy," I said. "I need to see action. Show me you mean it." Over the next few weeks, I watched as they put their promises into practice. Ben started therapy and took on more household duties. Emma helped with chores without complaint and even started asking about my day. They both encouraged me to take an art class I'd been eyeing. But it was a month later, when I came to the house for dinner, that I truly saw the change. The place was spotless, dinner was prepared by Ben and Emma together, and on the wall hung a beautiful framed photo of the three of us, taken years ago when we were truly happy. "We found this while cleaning," Emma explained. "We want to be that family again, Mom, but better. With you as an equal, not just a housewife." Ben nodded, adding, "We've learned how to function without you, Abby. But we don't want to. We want you here because we love you, not because we need you to take care of us." In that moment, looking at their hopeful faces, I felt a shift within me. The anger and resentment I'd been carrying began to melt away, replaced by a cautious optimism. "I'm not moving back in," I said slowly. "Not yet. But I'm willing to work on us. All of us together." The relief on their faces was palpable. We sat down to dinner, and for the first time in months, it felt like we were truly a family again. As we ate and talked, laughing at Emma's jokes and discussing Ben's therapy insights, I realized something profound. My journey wasn't about finding myself separate from my family. It was about redefining my role within it, about demanding the respect and appreciation I deserved. I looked around the table, at the faces of the people I loved most in the world, and felt a sense of peace wash over me. We weren't perfect, and we still had a long way to go. But we were really trying to build something better. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't just Abby the wife or Abby the mother anymore. I was Abby the artist, Abby the individual, Abby the strong woman who stood up for herself. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future might hold for all of us.